A study conducted across UK schools suggests that discrimination against Hindu pupils in UK classrooms is rampant. Little Hindu children are being picked upon. The survey carried out by the Henry Jackson Society found that 51% of Hindu parents claimed their children had experienced anti-Hindu hate in schools. Let's open this up. Let's first bring in research fellow associated with the Henry Jackson Society, who has also authored some aspects of this report, or at least overseen the conclusions. Charlotte Littlewood, thank you very much for joining us, Ms. Littlewood. A quick first overview of what your report says, and why should we take it at face value?
Thank you for having me on. We've actually just come out of the report launch. So this report was inspired by the investigations we did into the unrest in Leicester last year, where we saw large-scale civil unrest between Hindu and Muslim communities. And we saw levels of anti-Hindu hate that were both shocking and also very unfamiliar to most researchers. So then looking at that and trying to understand what had happened, we realized there was very little to rely on in the way of academic study into what is anti-Hindu hate and how is it manifesting in the UK, which is why we decided to look at what is happening in the schools. So what I did was I sent freedom of information requests to all of our public schools in the UK, asking them in the last 5 years, had they recorded any such cases of anti-Hindu hate. I also surveyed 988 Hindu parents across the country and asked them, had their child in the last 5 years experienced any form of anti-Hindu hate at school? What we found was 51% of parents, and this is considering that the child even speaks to them about these things, 51% of parents had had an incident of anti-Hindu hate described to them, whereas less than 1% of schools were recording anything at all. And this then didn't come actually as that much of a surprise when we looked at how Hinduism was being taught, the complaints around Hinduism, and other further studies that looks at the state of our religious education in the UK. In fact, this is quite unbelievable, but 50% of religious education teachers here in the UK have no qualifications in religious education or any relevant study to that end. So we have a complete ignorance when it comes to teaching on things like Hinduism, an approach that was found to be colonialist and coming from an Abrahamic sort of faith lens that was directly leading to bullying, and that's compounded by this growing sentiment of conflict between, unfortunately, sections of our Muslim community and Hindu communities here in the UK.
Why does this continue? There has been, and we've noticed this, a denial of Hinduphobia as it's manifested itself globally. Many here in India believe that it's Hindus who bring it upon themselves because they've become more militant. Did you notice this? We're talking about children. I'd fail to see how children could be militant.
No, we're dealing with children here in school. So we're definitely not dealing with anything militant. And I know that kind of accusation was thrown around in Leicester too, where we again didn't see any forms of Hindu terrorism or organized violence there. So when we're talking about the school children, we're talking about school children being held accountable and bullied for perceived political situations in India in a very similar way to which Jewish students are being held accountable for perceptions around Israel. We're seeing a forced narrative of Hindu nationalism and extremism being pushed on to Hindu pupils, to the extent that one boy had to move school 3 times in East London because the bullying against him for being Hindu was that bad.
And what's been the response at the state level or the administrative level or even within the schools?
So today is the day of launch. So from now, you'll be able to access this report online. Up until now, it wasn't available. We've had a full spread expose in the Telegraph, which is one of our largest popular broadsheet newspapers here in the UK. So that's very important. That will mean that it reaches the right kind of people. And next month, we'll be holding an event in Parliament that will look to push the recommendations. But now we can expect there's to start to be a response, a media response, a political response. The report does come with a very, very emotional forward from Ben Everett, MP, talking about how we need to understand the communities in our classrooms, the conflicts that are playing out, and that the schools are best placed to create our cohesive, tolerant communities going forward. So we really hope that the likes of MP Ben Everett will continue to support what we're saying here.
Okay, stay with us. I'm going to bring in Mr. Mitra. Mr. Mitra, are you surprised at all by what you are hearing from Charlotte Littlewood this evening?
Not really, Rahul, because, we saw this during Leicester, and, Charlotte did a fabulous report on the Leicester violence as well, which, again showed how institutions of the state, like the BBC, the Guardian and papers like that, had completely convoluted and perverted and mischaracterized what had happened. They had taken a very, one-sided view and had deliberately skewed a lot of the reporting and things like that in there. Now, you've seen the case of Rashmi Samant and more recently the young gentleman at the London School of Economics,
Mr. Qatar,
where action takes months, if not years, to come about. And the problem is school authorities would be even more in fear, because remember, universities tend to be aggregations, national aggregations, whereas schools tend to be very local in the UK. And so living in a community, the fear of repercussions, if you actually deal with accusations head on, becomes quite problematic even for teachers out there. So you'd see a very, even compared to what happened to Rashmi Sawant and the other gentleman, the response of schools in disciplining bullying like this would be even less. I want to draw your attention to an exchange that Charlotte Littlewood has just had on Twitter with a lady called Bushra Sheikh, who turns out is a commentator on British TV. And she quotes the report and she says, "I don't know why I'm laughing." Now, this is cases where Hindu students have had beef thrown at them. And her response of Ms. Bushra Sheikh is, "I don't know why I'm laughing. Maybe it's because the study was done by an anti-Islam think tank, the Henry Jackson Society." What exactly is anti-Islam about the Henry Jackson Society? Please let me know. Absolutely nothing. They've been focusing on issues of everybody. In this case, see, this is the problem. If anything goes against the set narrative, it automatically gets labeled anti-Islam. This is the kind of, guilt by association and name calling to alienate you that these people do. The stories they conjured up, turning nothing into something. Kids have forever been using religious slurs at each other. Understand, this is more than just slurs. This goes beyond blasphemy into sacrilege. It isn't just the use of words. It is actually physical actions against these kids.
Well, let me bring in...
But this has been...
Okay.
But this has been the response of Ms. Bushra Sheikh. So understand, we are up... this is going to be very, very problematic.
Well,
because
that is a standard template.
The overwhelming majority of British Muslims are very good people. The problem is the leadership out there is rotten through and through to the core.
But, I'm going to take a stand because this is a standard sort of template. Go into denial immediately, and it happens. Anirban Banerjee is here with us. I remember, Mr. Banerjee, and I know you're sympathetic to the TMC in Bengal, and therefore I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Unfortunately, even after the recent spate of Ram Navami violence in Bengal, it appeared that the Chief Minister had put the onus entirely on one community to keep the peace, the Hindu community. And you suggested that that was a backlash to militant Hindutva. Now, you never apply that in reverse, and that's why we're seeing this. And this is the reason.
Again, as I did before, the Honorable CM had squarely blamed the RSS BJP goons for the disturbance in West Bengal. And there were disturbances all over the country, over 100 places. It was never, quote-unquote, the Hindu community. There's no single statement that we'll be able to show. Anyway, the question here is that what I'm seeing from reports from a particular think tank is that under the Vishwaguru, the Hindus are in danger not only in India but all over the world, it seems. So what is the Vishwaguru doing? The question here is, if you are really concerned about the Hindu community in the United Kingdom, in England, in anywhere in the world, we want to see the Vishwaguru acting the way he claims that he does. Where are the actions? A simple round table talk in the evening is not going to solve the problem. We want the Indian government, even though this problem is basically with people who are foreign nationals. They might be of Indian origin, but I think they are all majorly citizens of a foreign country. Therefore, whether India would want to step in or not is a very different question. But if you are just simply wanting to set a narrative that Hindus are in danger, then I think that is a bit weak, because it's happening in the UK. The president, the premier there is a Hindu.
I've run out of time.
And he's
I just want to say, this was the statement of, now take it or leave it, this was the statement of Saket Gokhale. After the shocking events in Leicester, it's time the UK and other countries flag the threat of Hindutva extremism. That's what he said. This has repercussions on India's internal security and democracy. These overseas extremist groups also fund the BJP. If not curbed, this threat will only grow. That was the response. Right after the Ram Navami violence, the Chief Minister said outsiders are coming in and stoking problems. They're Hindus. Other Hindus in Bengal have a duty to protect the Muslims, even though in most of these incidents, there was enough footage to suggest that there was also unprovoked violence coming from the other side, from the other community. And the number of arrests that have been made, viewers, in both these cases of Ram Navami violence, there were no outsiders that were arrested except one. An overwhelming number of Hindus were arrested, and I'd hate to do this, viewers. It's only because there are some people in this country who do keep score. So just to tell them, overwhelming number of Hindus were actually held responsible. For what? For attacking their own procession. Sounds a bit illogical, but viewers, that's really where things stand. So there is institutionalized denial, and that's what's leading to this. I leave it at this, viewers.
Knowledge